Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Daily Huddle, Spiritual Thursdays. I'm your host, Dr. Monikah Ogando. I'm excited to be here with you today because we are going to be talking about, should your spirituality include social justice? Indeed, is it even spirituality if it does not include social justice? And you know what we're doing today. We are auditing assumptions. So stay tuned. We will get into this discussion today. Welcome. Hello, and welcome back. I am so excited that you are here because, we always love to dig into, this is our opportunity to start our Thursdays with some grounding, with some thought-provoking discussions, and to elevate your experience of the day. So in order to do that, let's get grounded. Giovanni, where are you and what are you thankful for?
I am here, Monica. Today I am here. Can't ever escape it. And what am I grateful for? Today I am grateful for internet.
I like it. I'm thankful for the mute button. That little cough. I like it. Chase is here as well. Chase, welcome. What time is it and who are you going to hug today?
Grand Rising, Doctor. The time is now, definitely right now. And you know what? I think I'm going to hug a stranger today. Someone who unexpectedly is just a nice person and just hug a stranger today. I'm going to make that my mission. I'll give you the feedback on that later.
Okay. All right. Very good. I like it. I like it. And today we are, let's see, 7 of us deep. 7 of us deep. I like it. Rashida, how are you?
I am fine. I am blessed and I'm not stressed.
Oh, okay. All right. So she knows how she is and how she is not. Both of them, a declaration. I love it. I love it. I'm excited to be here with you today because we're talking about should your spirituality include social justice? And as always, when I begin a conversation with you, I want to make sure that we are playing our instruments from the same sheet of music. So we're going to define some terms. And for the purposes of this discussion, your spirituality is your connection to the divine, however you refer to that. It could be God, it could be Jesus, Allah, Buddha, Krishna, universal intelligence, universal love, divine intelligence, divine love, whatever word you use, it's that higher power that you refer to. And in as much as your connection to your higher power includes your own wellness and your own evolution, does that also include social justice? I'm defining social justice as our orientation towards community and making sure that the highest good for the highest number is present. Highest good for the highest number. And of course, that in itself carries some corollary assumptions underneath it, right? Because if you operate from the position, not truth like a capital T, but just a place to stand. If you operate from the position that in order for somebody to succeed, somebody has to lose, then inherently there's going to be a not highest good for the not highest number in that assumption, right? And if your position is that you're really only concerned with your own evolution, and that is the only thing that is really within your purview, And if there's a nice little positive side effect of other people benefiting from your evolution, so be it, but it's not necessary or sufficient. If those two assumptions are present, then this conversation is irrelevant. The only way that this conversation can be relevant is if we are willing to at least challenge those assumptions or operate from different assumptions altogether. I'm operating from the assumption that I is not just me, it's not just my individual finite experience. I am also a part of a whole. I'm in community. I'm in community with other women. I'm in community with other Latinos. I'm in community with other Americans. I'm in community with other humans, just as a global citizen. I am in community with folks who are interested in the well-being of everyone, right? We're part of that family. And so in as much as that community is doing well, so am I, and vice versa. That's the part of our being community. Now, if you are steeped in the waters of tradition, quote unquote traditional, of modern patriarchy and capitalism, then the assumption of capitalism is I want the most profit for the least labor. That's the assumption. How you get there doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you stiff people. It doesn't matter if somebody suffers or gets maimed or killed in that pursuit. It doesn't matter. Those are secondary concerns to that. However, when you say that, people are like, oh, no. That's just morally wrong. And that's where this conversation begins. How does your spirituality fit into social justice concerns and vice versa? How do social justice concerns fit into your spirituality? So, have you thought about this? Do you have a position? Are you grappling with something particular or specific about social justice and your role in that? I think that when the pandemic began and we saw so much racial unrest, not only in the United States, but across the world, it started a conversation that had been happening in private and now became public discourse in terms of diversity, equity, inclusion, racial justice, double standards, how justice is meted out, why there are some people who are not afforded due process and others are afforded a lot of grace in the same justice system. And I want to jump on that conversation from the perspective of how does your spirituality accommodate or include or address social justice? So the question on the floor is, does it? Have you ever considered it? Where do you stand on it? Floor is open. Yes, Gio.
What a real question. I just got too real too soon. I was just thinking of coffee. As you create the possibility of this conversation and this question, what comes to my mind is, and surprisingly, actually, what's coming up for me is that I can't think of anything I do in my life that is not driven by some spiritual moral compass, with some moral compass or some spiritual moral compass. And now that I look at it, I've never quite really looked at it that way. Mm-hmm. Where do I get my moral compass from? I don't know. What would I say is religious? Mm-hmm. Yes and no. And I'm willing to risk saying it's a personal, it's my, if you will, it's my personal connection to what I say spirituality is, where my moral compass is coming from. Mm-hmm. And certainly it has certainly been influenced by the religions I grew up with and my environment. Okay. And so now there are some occasions where I go to downtown Atlanta And I am like there as an activist, like this thing matters to me, right?
Yeah.
And I don't really think that I'm making a difference for sure, but I want to be there.
Yeah.
And so I did that during the pandemic, and I don't know how I didn't get sick. And I have done it before in different contexts.
Mm-hmm.
Now that you're proposing the question, I do think that in many ways it is all driven, or not maybe all driven, but very influenced by my spiritual compass. Now, my spiritual compass is not what drives my intellectual effort in my speaking.
Mm-hmm.
I don't let what I think my spiritual compass is, I don't let that drive my speaking. I am more cautious so that I can be inclusive, if you will. I can actually have a debate. Or not a debate, I can actually have a conversation with people without them becoming defensive or feeling like I don't want to include how they feel, how they think. And so the conclusion is, I don't know if there's anything I do that is not driven by a spiritual compass. And my speaking, it is driven by logic, though. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say to start this conversation.
Oh, I like it. I like it because the conversation is about where do I personally stand, and then it begins to explore what do I owe? What do I owe society? What do I owe my community? Dr. Marian Edelman has a quote that says, "Service is the rent you pay for being on earth." And the implication is, of course, that when you're here, there are already ways in which people invisibly, unnotably contribute to you, and the right thing to do is to then divert or distribute your contribution, right? And now that I say that, I'm thinking about the ways in which I grew up. And so tell me if this triggers something in your memory from your childhood. My parents were very intent on making sure that we were not just taking, that there was a give and a take, that you contribute something to the house, that you contribute something to your brothers and sisters, that you do something nice for the family, because there's this reciprocity, there's this back and forth and give and take always happening inside of the family. So when we would go visit somebody's house, for example, we always showed up with something, a meal, a gift, a toy for the kids, a thing for the pets, or, a wine for, after dinner, or something nice, not just empty-handed. And that when we left the house, our own house, like you wake up in the morning and you brush your teeth and you get ready you go to school, blah, blah, blah. But when you leave the house better than you found it. And that you leave people, that this was a grandma thing, that you leave people better than you found them. And so when you start there in that little microcosm of your own nuclear family, and then you expand it to your neighborhood or to your city or to your state, country, etc., then how do you leave your neighborhood, your community, your city, state, country, etc., the world better than you found it? And how does that relate to what debt do you owe, or what obligation, or what moral standing or position do you take based on being part of a larger whole? So I like what you're saying here, Giovanni, about your moral compass. And it's not because somebody imputed it on you, it's because you decided this is the kind of person I want to be.
Yeah, it's certainly influenced by all of it, right? By my child, for sure.
Yeah. Well,
As you were creating what you were saying, something that got triggered for me in this opportunity to look at how my spirituality drives my social. How is the question framed? I'm sorry.
How does your spirituality inform does your social spirituality include social justice?
Yes, I find this is really interesting. I am out of words because what I am discovering in this conversation is that, oh my gosh, my entire life is driven by my spirituality, my moral compass for my spirituality, and even my logical thinking and my ability to include the other people's spirituality in a conversation, or other people's way of looking at life, as controversial as it could be. My ability to include all of it comes from my spiritual compass, if you will. It comes from like the differences in people should be honored. That's a spiritual compass, actually, if you will. As you were saying, when you were growing up, the idea was to leave home better. When I was growing up, I grew up with the influence of my grandmother, and she had this ability to include everything. She had an ability to include the homeless at the house. She had an ability to include the alcoholic at the house, to include the drug addict, to include the Republican, to include the Democrat, to include really controversial moments that the household was dealing. The house was a safe space for a meal. And so I grew up with that, and so the very things that I am up against morally, if you will, or the very things that I'm against that are currently happening, if you will, my moral compass says we can still share a meal. We can still talk, no matter how much I disagree with. And I never saw it as a spiritual, my spirituality actually creating my social justice, if you will. Anyway, I'm kind of being with it all. I hope I'm making sense.
You are. Yeah, you are. Absolutely. Yeah, good stuff. Who else has something?
Good morning. Good morning. I'm telling you, Dr. Ogando and Gio, I heard you are guys. I'm listening to you are guys. But there is always a but for we get into a discussion. And this is for me, it's a very delicate discussion. Delicate in a way, because in my ideology and my point of view is not both of your point of view. And why I say this is because when I was little girl and they asked, God is love and God is this, and you grow up and you're still thinking that God is love. We are love. Individually, we are love. So if we are love, what can we give out? So the point that I'm making is that being spiritual, and trust me, being spiritual is a lifestyle and is a growth. Sometimes they tamper your spirituality, sometimes, and this is where the social justice is tamper on your spirituality. Trust me, guys. That's why I said this discussion is okay, let's put as equilibrium. You go up and you go down. You go up and you go down. Where you want to stay? I want to stay in the middle. Trust me, just leave me in the middle, because this is dangerous. And why I say this is because I remember one time I'm very involved in the church. I do Eucharistic visitor. I serve on the altar. I do a whole lot of stuff. Why don't ask me? Because I can't even answer the question. But I remember one day I would say that at least 10 years ago, we're sitting with the priest and he's asking questions and he said, by the way, guys, we're like 12 of us. Do you think there's more good people or bad people on the planet? Oh, and Rashida always have to open her mouth. I said, there's always more good people on the planet. He said, why you came up with that conclusion? I said, why? It's because if there was more bad people on this planet, it would be more war. He said, good point. Good point. So trust me, our spirituality, it's evolving. And I will tell you, one thing I can tell people that COVID have really make we go back and think and connect with each other. And with that, I'm out, but I'm still here.
Good stuff. Thank you for that. That's awesome. I like the grappling. I'm not so attached to having an answer. I heard a long time ago that certainty is a function of psychosis. So I like the idea of like, you know, we evolve, we swim with things, we iterate, right? And so I like the grappling. Laura, you have something?
Yes, greetings and thank you for this conversation this morning. It's very triggering for me. I do resonate with you and Gia's share about your upbringing and serving. That was my experience as a child. And what I observed in my community is that we help each other. I'm from Jamaica, and as I said, that was my experience. But I also experienced and observed severe injustice that pushed me, well, to a place where my spirituality guides me and is always involved with social justice because of my experience. When I came to this country, I sought out places of serving the Creator from that space of doing justice. So I sought out African spiritualist movements where I could bring my child to see, you know, this is so triggering. But of course, I ended up in the Pan-African movement, and that's where up until today, I serve in the best capacity that I can. But as I said, it's coming from that space of injustice that I experienced and that I observed as a child that pushed me into doing the work I do today. With that, I'm complete. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. I can tell that it means a lot to you. And you know, we get so connected to the people that we serve and that serve us and causes that matter so deeply to us. It is important that we witness ourselves and each other in that pursuit. So thank you for that, Laura. Who else has something? Question, comments, uncontained vents, public grapplings. Come bring it.
Well, I have a thought.
Yes.
To bring to the conversation.
Tell me.
That I'm wondering if anything that comes out of my mouth is not driven by my spirituality, and I've, you know, up until this point, I thought that up until this call, I mean, I've always kind of had the loose thinking that my spirituality is just something that I go and connect to rather than something that uses me. You know, I never quite made that powerful connection until this call. And it's kind of self-realizing, like, whoa, there is a lot of power. And also it leaves me in the thought I'm having right now is, man, that it really explains why I'm going to make a generalization, and it's not true, of course. I'm just thinking out loud here. This really explains what there is so much conflict in the planet between human beings. If a lot of human beings, if their actions, their behaviors and their thinking is like mine, where is driven and consciously by their spiritual moral compass, I can see why they go to the strengths that they go to defend their view. I could see it, and I'm just kind of discovering that in this call.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. I think that being in the conversation of what would it mean if people didn't, like, for example, when somebody tries to quote unquote force somebody else into their point of view or convince them or evangelize or whatever, what does it mean about them if they don't quote unquote convert, or you don't get them to see your point of view, or in some cases force them to see your point of view? And what does it mean about you if they don't? How does that threaten your relationship with your divine source, right? And so then it's like, oh, okay, so then the approval of your divine source is conditional upon your behavior and your impact on other people, and the means, the ends justify the means in that way. And it's a rabbit hole, right? Of like, okay, the deeper we go into this, the more red flags that pop up. Cece, you have something?
Yeah, thank you. I love this topic. I actually arrived late, so if I'm off point, I apologize. But what I'm gathering is that my experience of growing up, my religious experience was based on what my parents injected into me, and at that time, they actually thought their thinking was correct. And at that point, they weren't thinking correctly. So therefore, my experience of spiritual experience was tainted based on their opinion. So as an adult, my mindset, my thinking had to change to what I understood was normal. So I had to find something that was quote unquote normal, so that the view that I was pointing to was really the truth. Because when I would experience someone trying to tell me their view and they would do it with such force, I shied away from it because it didn't look to be healthy or normal. So when someone tries to force their view onto me, it is like not received favorably because of so much force. And so what I've learned along the way is everyone has an opinion, and if their experience, they can, their religious or spiritual experience relates to them, I let them, they keep it. I don't, think forcing my opinion onto them is right, because their experiences directly relates to them. What I can do is choose what works for me, and other people, they get the opportunity to choose for themselves.
Right.
And living speaks bigger volumes than forcing a view onto somebody. So I believe that if I, living a life that, pleases the higher power God for me, is where I'm geared towards, not towards forcing my opinions onto somebody or somebody else forcing their opinion onto me, if I could say it like that.
Yeah.
So with that, I am passing.
Passing the mic. Thank you, Cece. Laura says on the comments, I've lost some friends who could not convert me to their religious point of view. Yeah, that's happened to me too. Giovanni says, is the opportunity of converting a social justice cause? That's a great question, because can you allow someone to live their best life according to their beliefs without imputing yours? And will you only contribute to their life if they align with your beliefs? Right? And so we have to answer those questions honestly for ourselves in order for us to know where we stand in that social justice issue. There have throughout history plenty of cultures and, well, I hesitate to call them societies, but plenty of groups of people, because secret society implies civilization, and what I'm about to say does not describe a civilized behavior, but that's another sermon for another Sunday. Plenty of people have justified doing harm on a community of people because they did not align with their quote unquote spiritual / religious beliefs. And so I want you to use this question, this conversation, to audit your own position, to audit your own assumptions. Cece says, let people live in freedom of their own spiritual life. And I'll add to that, to the point that you said earlier, Cece, the most converting thing, the most convincing, I'll call it convincing, the most convincing thing that you can get me to consider is your example, right? Like the way you live your life, the way you treat other people, the way you manage your space in the world, the way you leave people in places better than you found them, and not according to your definition, but according to theirs. Love people the way that they want to be loved, not the way that you think is best. Because sometimes we don't have enough information to make those kinds of assessments. And yeah, thank you so much for being with us today. Carmen, I see your hands up, but we're like 2 minutes in. So real quick, I want to get you in.
Yes, good morning, buenos dias. And it's really quick, but you see, because spirituality I learned from my mother. And I left my house, my mother's house when I was about 12, because from there, she don't took care of me. But the most that I remember, and the thing because I live today is for spirituality, and the thing that I learned from my mother. Because she's always, and she's always sent us to church. But my mother, I never seen my mother going to church. But was the more peaceful person in life that lived for justice and fight for justice for others. And I say, when you are like that, spiritual and moral, you can go and you can run through the world like I did, being a little child, and never did something wrong based in my spirituality. That today made me even cry. Thank you.
Oh, wow, awesome. Thank you so much for the contribution. Love it. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We appreciate you. Remember, of course, as always, love generously, laugh, guffaw, cackle, giggle, all of that. Sleep, get yourself at least 7 hours of sleep per night. Eat more plant-based. Give of yourself generously, your time, energy, attention, talents. Stress less, move more, and of course, audit your assumptions. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We'll see you next time.
Beautiful day.
Thank you. Have a great
One love, guys.
day.
One love.
Thank
One
you.
love.
Love you all.